Section 162 deals with modification of certain terms of imprisonment. This is modeled, it comes from the Second Look Act of 2019, which was introduced by Senator Cory Booker. And in short, it allows individuals who have been incarcerated for more than 10 years to request a sentence review. And so that was the basis for this section. And it's once again rooted in the belief that individuals are capable of redemption, that people are capable of self-improvement. You know, I'm not the same person that I was 10 years ago. We all change and grow as human beings. And so it's appropriate after a decade or longer, reevaluate, to give a person a chance to be reevaluated and see if the sentence that they've been given is still appropriate. Once again, like the repeal of mandatory minimums, this creates the opportunity for judges to judge. Yeah, so let me talk more about some of the details in this legislation. One of the reasons that it's needed is because back in the 1980s, federal parole was abolished. And so it used to be after serving, a third of your sentence, you could apply for parole. And parole is to give your word that you've been reformed and you'll behave, and to be let out on the condition that you'll have good conduct. But we got rid of federal parole. And so that dramatically increased the length of prison sentences that people were serving. And then, of course, combined with long sentences, especially with the war on drugs, was really part of the explosion in our prison population over the last 3 decades. And so what this section of the Blueprint for a Better America will do is allow someone who's been incarcerated for more than 10 years to request a sentencing review, or someone who has been sentenced and incarcerated under a law that has been repealed by the Weldon-Angelos Justice Act. So the drug war. If a person is serving a sentence for a federal drug crime that is repealed by this legislation, then they would have the opportunity to ask for their sentence to be reviewed. It wouldn't be automatic. It would be, again, it would give the opportunity for judges to judge. On a petition for a sentencing review hearing, the judge would have to hold a hearing. The defendant would be entitled to counsel. Both sides could submit evidence, and in order for a judge to modify a sentence, there would have to be a positive finding. The judge would have to explicitly find that the defendant was not a danger to the safety of any person or the community. They'd have to find that the person had demonstrated readiness for reentry, and they would have to find that it was in the interest of justice to modify the sentence. And only if all 3 of those conditions were met could the court modify a sentence. If they turned it down, people would be able to reapply after an additional 5 years. If they were turned down a second time, they'd be able to reapply after another 2 years. And for incarcerated people over 50 years of age, also have another opportunity to apply. There are rebuttable presumptions in here. The rebuttable presumption is that someone who has been sentenced to a term of imprisonment for a drug crime, a drug offense, something that has been repealed by the Weldon-Angelos Justice Act, the presumption would be that their sentence should be modified. And so the burden would be on the state or the prosecutor to say that, to prove otherwise. Similarly, for incarcerated people over 50 years of age, there would be a rebuttable presumption that they would be released. The burden of proof would be to demonstrate that they were still a danger to the community, or not ready to be not ready to re-enter society. A couple other things that this does is it also sets up an annual report so that once a year, the Judiciary Committee in the Senate and in the House would get a report showing how many incarcerated individuals got a sentence reduction under this sentence, how many got denied, what their demographics were, and their location. Yeah, I think that again, this goes back to the idea that, well, the individuals are capable of redemption and self-improvement. In the words of Brian Stevenson, each of us is more than the worst thing that we've ever done. And to that, I would add that by definition, the worst thing each of us have done is a statistical outlier. There are too many people in prison serving long sentences without an opportunity for a sentence review. And we can address that injustice by giving people the opportunity after a decade to have their sentences reviewed. With that, Mixed Chair, I think that concludes my testimony for Section 162, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Would this apply to people sentenced to mandatory minimums once they are repealed?
It's supposed to. I guess I'd have to double check I guess the language specifically says offense, which is no longer punishable pursuant to enactment of the Weldon Angeles Justice Act or the amendments made under this act. And so since mandatory minimums, I guess there's still, the underlying crime still exists. I think that could probably use some clarification, and be happy to work on it with the subcommittee.
Does the victim have any say in this?
Yes. The victim of a crime for which someone is incarcerated, they would be notified whenever the incarcerated person applies for a sentence review. In fact, sentencing review gets added to the list. Is it like the Victim's Bill of Rights? And so there's a list of proceedings that they have a right to be heard at, and sentencing review gets added to that list. And then when the judge is considering the factors that around a sentence modification, they have to consider any statement that the victim has made. So yes, they would be able to object or support and say, look, this person wronged me, but after 10 years, 15 years, justice has been served. I feel like that they have been rehabilitated, and further incarceration is not necessary for justice. So the victim would have an opportunity to weigh in.